Hello everyone, I hope you're having a great day as usual and welcome back to Spar&Brawl. My name is Cam Kompani and I'm one half of your hosting duo, and as always I'm joined by my co-host, friend and sparring partner Sam Danishvar. Sam, what do you have for us this week? This Armenia-Azerbaijan story seemed to have gotten even bigger, no?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think we have a good update on that. There are some political events going on in Kyrgyzstan or Kyrgyzstan, so we're gonna hopefully talk about that. And I think you have a couple of short stuff about
Yeah,
Facebook, right?
Yeah, so Facebook banned all of QAnon, I think that's how you say it, related accounts and everything. And for once, I think that I agree with what Facebook is doing, banning any groups or anything associated with this group. But I think you don't side with me, so that's going to be fun. We're going to talk about that. And I just have another article that really shows once again that all this talk of fake news and whatnot, okay, that's one problem with the media, but there's a bigger systematic problem that's always existed. And I think this article will bring that to light. Okay, so without further ado, let's get into our first story for this week, which is Armenia-Azerbaijan. So I've heard that most of the population has been displaced from the specific area where all of this is taking place. There's no agreement has been reached yet, and the fighting is going on. So can you please give us some of the main updates, Sam?
Sure. And by the way, the situation there is, to be honest, it's changing. It's extremely fluid. So by the time we upload this, these info, some of them might be outdated somewhat. But yeah, I mean, I have, from what I read, it seems the Armenian government and Armenian sources are saying half the population in Nagorno-Karabakh have been displaced due to the current conflict. And well, let me just categorize my update into different group. First of all, last week when we talked about it, and somebody mentioned that in the comments, I didn't mention that there has been. That is definitely correct, and shout out to the person who left the comment. That there has been UN resolutions that have basically supported Azerbaijani position, saying that the Nagorno-Karabakh region and the seven surrounding areas are legally part of Azerbaijan. So that's one part. And in July, in the skirmishes that were happening in July, actually, I didn't know that a high-ranking military officer, almost a general, I believe, of Azerbaijani forces was killed. So, which led to the largest protest in the last 20 years, calling for war. So, you could argue President Aliyev had been under pressure at home from July onwards to do something, basically, to take some action, which may explain the timing for this. So, this is some background update information. There has been some update in the position taken by third parties, let's call them so far. Uh, Russia basically sort of is staying out because they have a military agreement with Armenia that says that they must act if Armenia is attacked. But since Armenia is a separate entity, legal entity from Nagorno-Karabakh, Putin said that we are not obliged under that agreement to enter this conflict as long as Armenia's mainland is not attacked, which basically is kind of sending warnings to Turkey as well not to enter the war or not to enter Armenian region, basically. But at the same time, staying out of the main conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh, it seems. Uh, that seems to be the Russian position, and I believe Putin in his interview he did say that there are occupied territories, which is the language that Azerbaijan uses uh, about those areas. But that may he may be referring mainly to the seven areas that are surrounding Nagorno-Karabakh and are mostly Azeri people there. I'm not sure, to be honest. It might be not mostly Azeri anymore. But anyways, So he might be referring to those areas surrounding Nagorno-Karabakh, not Karabakh itself. Interestingly, on the other side, Iran, which is traditionally an ally of Armenia, officially at least came out in favor of Azerbaijan. They called for a return of occupied territories, which again, I have a feeling Iran is trying, because there is as I mentioned last week, there is an extremely large ethnic Azeri population in Iran, based on some estimates 30 million, based on some 40 million, far more than there are in Azerbaijan itself. So they may have wanted to play a balancing act, as in they are referring to probably the areas surrounding Nagorno-Karabakh, not.
But hold on, sorry. So I have a question. But so you think Iranians in Iran who have Azerbaijani background or ethnicity, do they identify themselves in that way with Azerbaijan and the country?
Oh yeah,
Oh,
definitely.
really?
Yeah, there were. I mean, in football matches, whenever there are Azeri teams against some other teams, there are certain nationalists, so-called national. Although it's very because Iranian nationalism is very much actually born out of Azeri population, so it's really weird, because the hardcore Iranian nationalists are usually Azeri, and then there are Azeri hardcore, like separatists or whatever. So no, yeah, there were protests in Tehran, sorry, in Tabriz, in Ardabil, in Iranian Azeri cities. I believe 37 people were arrested because there were clashes during the protest.
Interesting.
So yeah, no,
And
definitely.
what about the Armenian population in Iran? Because there's a big
Ar-
Armenian
Ar-
population in Iran as well. And they
yeah,
have a more even, I mean, they're much more identified as Armenian than Azerbaijani ethnics in Iran, no?
when it comes to middle class or higher echelons of the society, you're right. Armenians have a more distinct identity, while Azeris that are second generation or third generation, like myself, uh, are pretty much, they usually tend not to speak the language, for example, but Armenians tend to speak Armenian. But when it comes to lower classes, which are the majority of the people, I would say um, they are far more fervent. I don't know how to say, they have a stronger national ethnic
Armenian or
identity.
Azerbaijani?
Azerbaijanis.
Azerbaijani, okay,
Because
interesting.
yes, Armenians have been, I mean, the integration of Armenians and Jewish people in Iran was always in they were the bureaucracy of Iran during whenever it was an empire. And they've been in bureaucracy and in arts very present. So, they've been urbanized, they've been pretty much integrated into the middle class, they are dispersed. Azeris are, still very much concentrated in certain regions. So it's a whole different dynamic. But
Interesting. In
but
Tehran, are there a lot of Azeris?
oh man, yeah. I
Oh,
mean,
really?
the whole. I mean, it's a joke. Sometimes it's a joke that is said that Azeris or Turks, or Turkic speakers, they've taken over Tehran without sword and blood,
Mm-hmm.
because if you go to any bazaar in Iran,
A
it's
market.
yeah, yeah, it's with a lot of Azeri people there. To be honest, industries in Iran, major industries, like people who are, because Iran is still not, it's not still a fully, like, there are not as many CEOs, but there are famous industrialists. For example, majority of them are Azeri. Like Azerbaijan is to an extent manufacturing heart of Iran, to an extent Azerbaijan north. So yeah, very much so. Yeah, yeah, yeah. In Tehran, I mean, it's half of Iran are, like, not half, but at least let's say 30% of Iran or 20% of Iran are pure Azeri, and then the other, like there is at least another 30 or 40% that are have Azeri roots, have Azeri blood. Some, you know what I mean? Like it's very, to be honest, yeah, Persian Azeri difference is very, it's very problematic, to be honest, because even if you look at historically, if you look at it, both Safavids and Ottomans, the medieval empires that preceded modern Iran and Turkey, they should be described as a Perso-Turkic tradition, because they were both, like, the language of military in both countries was Turkish, but the language of schools and universities in both countries was Persian. So it's such a, it's so infused together. Armenia is not as infused, although I would say in Iran it's far more infused than it is in Turkey due to the last 100 years. Yeah. So, but yeah, Iran, it seems, I don't know if Iran is, the reason Iran is taking this position, maybe because they're trying to stay close to Russian position. Maybe it is because there are fears of, like, for example, more clashes in Iran. Although Iran did issue stern warnings to both sides, because there were a couple of missiles that landed in Iran, and then I believe a helicopter clashed on Iranian side. So they did issue stern warnings about that. That, yeah, we would protect our borders and stuff. The other important development is that Azerbaijan is really sticking to its gun and saying that they're not going to accept France as a honest broker
Oh, sorry,
anymore.
sorry. Before you get into it, just on your last point, I want to ask you a question. So I read this in Western media. I was wondering if you read much about this in Iranian media. But I think MSNBC or NBC had an article about how Rouhani, the Iranian president, kind of said that they won't tolerate any foreign fighters in Gorno, and I think he was referring to Turkey sending Syrian fighters there. Have you read much? Have you heard about this?
All right. So, yeah, there are allegations, and these allegations have been mostly covered by European sources, that there are Syrian mercenary fighters being, we talked about it last week, Turkmen fighters that were alleged to have been active in Libya and now are being deployed in Azerbaijan. I watched an interview with an Azerbaijani ambassador to UK, and I believe there was another interview with Ilham Aliyev, the president, and they deny this. They say we don't need foreign fighters. Obviously, we have a far greater, and they do have a far greater manpower than Armenia. And but I mean, to be honest, it does make sense. It does fit in with Turkish way of fighting in Syria and Libya, and I mean, it's always better to. I mean, there is great support for the war right now in Azerbaijan. It seems from the reporters there, although the reporters there are always accompanied by a government minder to make sure, I suppose, everything is in order. But there is great support for the war in Azerbaijan. But when bodies start coming back, you know, uh, that support tends to die down pretty fast.
Yeah. But
It does
so
make
then,
sense.
so sorry for cutting you off. But then, so based on you saying that Iran is siding with Azerbaijan, it seems
Publicly.
publicly. So that means they're on Turkey's side then also,
Yeah, to be honest,
as
Iran has
opposed to.
under Erdogan and in recent years, because of the mutual distrust and suppose somewhat, you could argue, hatred of the West and Western powers, whatever they are. Yeah, they've been growing closer. That's what I was actually, yeah, that kind of lends itself well to the next thing I was going to talk about. So, as I said, Azerbaijan has, they don't want France as a broker anymore. They say they're extremely one-sided, and they insist that Turkey must be part of any moderating forum or council or whatever. So that's largely because they feel like the Minsk group, the security group for Europe, has failed to resolve this issue. There are also reports, again, these reports are by European sources who are usually extremely biased against Putin, that uh, Putin, because Nikol Pashinyan, the current president of Armenia, came to power through peaceful protest, and he seems to be the first democratic elected in an election that wasn't rigged or whatever. So some people say that Putin is not very does not have great relations with him, and both Putin and to a lesser extent, to a lesser not lesser extent but less importantly Iran, they seem to have very good relations with Erdogan, and they all sort of again share that mistrust of the West and America and all that. uh, so that might be another reason why Azerbaijan is standing its ground, why Azerbaijan chose this time to attack. Although when I was seeing a couple of interviews with a couple of professors of international relations, they tended to argue that the uh, the strain between Pashinyan and Putin is somewhat exaggerated by Azerbaijan, and if Turkey directly gets involved, Russia for sure will intervene, and obviously on the side of Armenia. And I mean, in the end, their geopolitical interest lies with Armenia to a larger extent, and they are culturally closer Christian nations. Armenians are extremely integrated into Russian society as well, kind of like Iran. There's a huge Armenian middle class. And by the way, Armenians in America and in France, they're lobbying. There are Armenians going back from Europe, from America to fight, to help with the fight. Kardashians, for example, are Armenian background. They're raising money. Cher is of Armenian background, but I don't know if she's yeah, involved in any work or anything. But there are both sides basically are. This is a very this is a media war as well as a hard war, and yeah, everybody is doing a lot of interviews, a lot of uh, volunteering work, that type of thing. But yeah, well, I think the way it's going, though, the rhetoric seems to be going down during the last few days, and I think we're gonna end up with a settlement where Armenia probably gives back couple of areas of those seven, maybe not all of them, but couple of them, while retaining one or two as a corridor that connects it to mainland Armenia. And I think Armenia then immediately gonna move towards unifying Karabakh with mainland Armenia, so that way in future Russia is forced to act if there is a war or
Yeah.
something.
They want to unify it, but that is not necessarily what the population of that region wants, right?
Yeah, I would think they're okay with
Yeah.
unifying. They identify as Armenian. I told you all previous presidents, the speakers,
Mm-hmm.
prime ministers, they were from that region. And yeah, I doubt there is a great separatist feel within Arstak or Karabakh or whatever you want to
Yeah.
call it.
No, that part was really fascinating when I learned that last week about really how important this region is for Armenia. I mean that their mainland politicians, the highest ones, come from there, and they built their reputation based on the war in the '90s and everything.
Yeah, except Pashinyan, who is the first, I believe, uh, prime minister or president, I forget, that is born in mainland
Mm-hmm.
Armenia, mainland.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's more people have died. Obviously, as we mentioned, a lot of people been displaced.
Yep.
So it's not good, but hopefully it might get better.
No, definitely. So you think that once, if they can get Turkey on the table too, then maybe some kind of if the Armenians agree, then some kind of negotiation could happen.
Yeah, but I don't know if how Armenia is also. I mean, Armenia agreed with international mediation, but they are very, very, uh, they are very, they are very uncomfortable with Turkey. So I don't know. I genuinely don't know how open they are to that idea. But they've just they had and they had somebody go to, I think Pashinyan himself may have gone to Moscow, so we'll see. Russia is the key player, to be honest. Turkey is trying to become the more important player. Russia is still the key player, so I think that they gonna define the game, so to speak. Oh, yeah. So, shall we start talking about Kyrgyzstan and the situation there?
Oh yeah, definitely,
Oh, wow.
definitely.
So, because I did the research for this story, so tell me what did you hear, and then I expand on it or
Well,
whatever.
I pretty much, from what I heard last Sunday, there was some kind of parliamentary elections, and the pretty much the final results, they seem ridiculous. Apparently, how they came out, so there were protests immediately, and since then, so there were parliamentary elections, but at the same time, so they were deciding a prime minister. So this is the part that I don't understand, and there is a president. So this is the other part which I'm not very unclear. But since then, there have been protests, and apparently they've changed like 2 or 3 times who should be the prime minister, and apparently this has gone to all kinds of other layers of and levels of government across the country where they've tried to change the mayor and other government officials. And at first, it seemed like 2 or 3 days ago, it seemed like, they were maybe going in the right direction, or the will of the people, or the majority of them, they were getting what they wanted. But since it keeps on changing and switching, who should be in power, that, yeah. So basically, you got a very, like, a very foggy view that I have of the situation.
Yeah, to be honest, this was not a country like, as I mentioned, I have been to Armenia and Georgia, so Caucasus was sort of not that it was sort of on my radar, so to speak, but not so much Kyrgyzstan or Kyrgyzstan as they say. But this is a small, well, relatively a small country in
Yeah,
Central
6 million
Asia.
people, I think I saw.
Yeah, former Soviet Republic, and uh, let me just again, this is the background I got basically following the collapse of the Soviet Union, and with these countries you have to start with that always. Following the collapse of the Soviet Union, you had a president who was in power. It was a very interesting president. He was part of. Uh, he was a Soviet official, but he very quickly became westernized and argued that the actual revolutionary was actually Adam Smith, not Karl Marx, whatever that means. But yeah, uh, so he was in power until he was a president of Kyrgyzstan. He was in power until 2005 when they had something called the Tulip Revolution. Oh, his name was Askar Akayev, and he was seen as pro Russia as well as pro America. He worked with everybody, you know. He was fine with everybody. And this is a country, by the way, it's very very much dependent on Russia and Kazakhstan. It's much larger and much richer neighbor. But then, yeah, there was a colored revolution, as they call them, a tulip revolution, they call Kyrgyzstan's revolution in 2005, and it brought about change. The revolution was led by basically three groups: a group of like communists, a group of sort of modernizers, and a group of more nationalist Turkic sort of affiliation. And then they had another president, which was, to be honest, it's extremely difficult for me to differentiate between them because they all seem to have had relatively okay relationship with both US and with America. US built, sorry, US and Russia, sorry. The US had an air base there, uh, built, I believe, in 2001 or 2003 for Afghanistan war. But since 2005, Kyrgyzstan was under pressure from China and Russia to have Americans expelled from that base. In 2009, I believe Russians built a military base there, and in 2014, Americans are expelled finally. There were allegations of petrol dumping, illegal trade, all that type of thing as well. So there was some clashes with the local population as well. Then again, I mean, it just seems that again the president that follows Akbar Akayev is Koramanbek Bakiev. He's again removed by another wave of protest in, I believe, I forget which. Oh, 2010. So 5 years later, that's the second one. Yeah, he's removed through a wave of, revolution, and it's good. The trend seems to be they run away to a Russian embassy, then they resign there, and then some other strong leader is sort of comes to power. That seems to be the trend. So and then the first one, I believe, first runs away to Kazakhstan and then runs away to Russia. This one, I believe, runs away first to Russia, then to Belarus, something like that. Doesn't, to be honest, these details, in my view, don't matter too much. But after that, but the current one, to be honest, I don't know. I didn't read about a presidential election being at the same time. I believe this was the parliamentary election, but the pro-government, which means basically pro-president parties, are there. There are allegations that they've been paying people at the ballot boxes, and they've used vote rigging basically to win the elections, and
No, the
all the.
no, the
So
part that I was unclear. Yes, I understood there's a parliamentary election, but I kept on hearing prime minister, prime minister, prime minister. So I thought it was a country where the prime minister is the main figure, and there isn't even a president. But apparently there is. The
no,
country also has a president.
the president is the main guy. The prime minister is the one they changed quickly because they basically all the political parties that are opposite to the government before the previous parliament, the electoral commission uh, invalidated the election, right? And then they attacked and they freed prisoners, and there is some. Let me again. I have to read the names by. I have to look. Sorry about that. Uh, where is it? The Prime Minister. Oh, Sadr Japarov. Sadr Japarov, which I believe was just freed from prison, is now the new Prime Minister of Kyrgyzstan. The president, again, sorry, the president who these protests are against is Soronbay Jenbekov. If I'm sure I'm mispronouncing this name, but sorry about that. These protests are against him. I believe he has now ran away to an embassy. I forget which embassy. He's claiming that there is a no. I don't think he's in an embassy, but he does claim this is a coup d'état. And he has, in an interview with BBC, he has said he's ready to pass the power to a strong leader, which again seems to be the trend that they are ready to sign away. But I think this one is probably, this is not much of a geopolitical issue that is like Russia and American. This is not much of that. It seems to be the main like contention seems to be between President Soronbay Jeenbekov and um, former president. Let me Alamzbek Atambayev. It seems to be its power struggle between these two. Alamzbek Atambayev was a previous president from 2011 to 2017, and he seems to have a bit of a. He had great relations, by the way, with Russia as well and with America, but he had a bit of a fiery relations with Kazakhstan, and he seemed to have a more of a direct language. He did accuse Kazakhstan of interfering in the elections. These two guys, the former president and the current president, who is about to resign, they seem to have had a great relationship originally. They Like the current president called this guy his older brother, gave him the highest honor of the country, and the relationship was great. It seems kind of like a Putin Medvedev situation that, okay, I'm gone now, he's in my place. But over the last 2 years, the relationship deteriorated significantly. And I mean, they, both sides accuse each other of corruption and mishandling of issues. Obviously, this this led to sorry uh, this led to arrest of the former president, I believe in 2019, and now one of the main things protesters did was to free this former president from prison. So there seems to be and I mean, it's not clear how much the opposition is unified right now. It seems to be three different camps of a sort of a youth movement, a nationalistic movement, and a sort of modernizing, like westernizing movement. So the level of unity is not clear, but it seems to be the fight between these two men that is driving this protest and all that. But I mean, obviously, there is widespread corruption. People are upset about that, so they come out.
And I mean, there seems to be a lot of protests, civil disobedience, everything you can think
Oh
of.
yeah, it was the biggest, they said, since the tulip revolution in 2005. So bigger than the 2010. And I believe there may have been some protest in 2015 as well. But I just went over that to give
Yeah.
a quick. This was the quick overview, by the way.
Yeah, no, and yeah, but like I mentioned, I also read that they're going into mayor's offices and taking out a politician, putting another one. Then a third person arrives with a bigger mob. I heard one of these, so like a third person became mayor. So it seems to have spread to most of the country, and
Oh yeah,
yeah,
yeah, it's a relatively underdeveloped country as well. It's always been actually, unlike most other Soviet countries, it's always been calling for more Russian influence and Russian cooperation. So yeah, it makes sense for uh, regions not so close to center to, yeah, it's chaos reigns for now. But I think it seems to be like in this country, it seems to be, again, they go through this circle every 5 years or so. So I hope it comes down quickly without much casualties or injuries or whatever. But so, I mean, I saw France 24 was covering this, and they sort of was trying to connect it to Russia. And again, I don't know. I don't see much geopolitical. I mean, there are resources there and stuff, but at this point, I think, yeah, I don't know if how much Russia cares about this issue.
yeah. Okay, very nice. So I think we've done our two in-depth sections for today. They were a bit shorter than usual, but both of these have been very interesting stories in a way for someone who doesn't know much about either three of these countries, Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Kyrgyzstan. So I've really enjoyed it in this sense to learn about them and learn the history and everything that's going on right now. I mean, and these two stories have been the leading headline of DW and Al Jazeera for the past week. Mixed with Trump getting COVID and vice president and the vice president debate.
Oh, by the way, we shouldn't discount this, that both in case of Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Kyrgyzstan, the fact that America's attention now is solely on the election may have contributed to the timing of these conflicts. I mean,
Interesting.
in terms of Kyrgyzstan, less so because there was the elections there. But yeah, it's just it's politicians always make these gaps, especially Azerbaijan, Armenia. The initial attacks seem to have been coordinated to coincide with the American presidential debates. So you
Very interesting.
know, but yeah, it's interesting. These new territories are always more interesting. Hopefully, we'll do some more research on the history of Kyrgyzstan, and I know they have some bad relations with Uzbekistan, border issues. Maybe it does evolve into a geopolitical issue. We'll see.
Okay, so now we're gonna segue to our quick takes section, and the first story that we have is on Facebook banning QAnon off all its platforms. So Facebook on Tuesday said that they're banning all accounts from its platforms, remove Facebook pages, groups, Instagram accounts representing QAnon. And I'm not too hip actually to what QAnon is. I know a little bit, but I never looked into it exactly too much. But I just wanted to get a quick definition of what they are. So pretty much, it refers to a conspiracy theory which has now turned into pretty much a group of people. And the conspiracy theory started a few years ago, saying that there's like a group of elite Democrat pedophiles who want to, I don't know, kill Trump.
No, no,
Yeah,
but
that's the
no.
first line on Wikipedia. On Wikipedia, actually, let me read you what Wikipedia says who they are.
All right.
Wikipedia says that QAnon is a far-right conspiracy theory alleging that a group of Satan-worshipping pedophiles running a global child sex trafficking ring is plotting against Donald Trump, and he's battling them, and that Trump is planning a day of reckoning known as the storm. And I think from this, it has just morphed into this, seems like pro-Trump,
But,
extreme
and
far-right
there
group,
is,
right? So do you want to add anything to
I,
that?
there is a crucial aspect that there is somebody within the deep state or within the intelligence services that is pro-Trump and leaks like like there's these all these coded messages being leaked to online forums or through Trump making gestures or something. So I think that's another key aspect of the conspiracy, that there is somebody from within that is sending signals to these groups or people or whatever. And yeah, that
Yeah.
seems to
And
be
some
the
famous
conspiracy.
examples that I can think of, they're related to Pizzagate.
I think
Um,
that it sort of evolved from that.
yeah,
So
so
it's
that and a bunch of other things. Okay, but let's just get right into this story and we'll just give our take on it because we told you what it's about. I personally, in the past, when there were talks of Facebook banning X and Y and having to be more tough and all that, I've even when they banned Alex Jones, I can't remember exactly what was the reason, but I remember at that time I wasn't too comfortable with the reasoning. But here in this case, and I want to hear what you have to say, is that I kind of side on them, and because this group and everything that's associated with it, it violates all the normal boundaries that we have for free speech. So they incite violence. There is they pretty much say things that aren't true. So libel and defamation. So these are all things that are not within the normal boundary of free speech. So I think it makes sense for Facebook to also not allow anything associated with this group to be available on across their platforms. So that's kind of where I fall on this. What do you think?
no, I completely disagree, to be honest, because I think if they do incite violence, that's a criminal offense, and that should obviously police should take action. And that's no difference from me going to a street and taking a loudspeaker and inciting violence. In both
Which they
cases,
do.
the
The group
same
is
act.
very much associated with that.
Sure, sure. And but many Christian groups incite violence. Many extremist Mormon groups incite violence. That doesn't mean we should ban all Mormons from having their own forms. That's first. That's first of all. So, like you said, they say. I mean, sorry, and I laughed. You said they say things that aren't true. Well, I'm sorry, but who doesn't? To be honest, especially online. Well, CNN
Yes,
doesn't, or
but no, a
MSNBC,
public.
or
Well,
Joe Biden, or
I mean, those true. However, I would push back on CNN and other news outlets saying things that aren't true. They often what they say is true. It's just that it's so incomplete that it's misleading. I would categorize more what's said on mainstream media as being misleading and not being pure false statements.
no, I'm sorry, but the Syrian conflict was one they've made. I mean, they've made claims they couldn't back up at that time, and later on turn out to be false. So falsehoods basically. So I don't see any difference there.
But those, I
And
mean, just because they get
and
away with it, doesn't, I don't think necessarily means that it
no, no,
makes it
but
okay. Because publishing
oh,
false statements is against the law. Saying something that is false is
which
technically
law?
against the law. I mean, it is. You can go to,
American?
you can bring that to court. Yes, in America and other places. I know apparently in the UK they're very stringent
No,
about
no,
that.
making false statements to authorities, to court is against the law. Not when, otherwise,
No,
like
if
every
someone,
time you tell your child Santa Claus is real, you're making criminal
no, because
federal
you're not,
offense.
no, because you're not, it's not towards a person. You're not ruining
No, you're
X
yes.
person's reputation.
Wait,
So
wait.
if I go
No,
around
you
and spreading lies
lie.
about you, for instance, you
No, no,
could very much um, get a verdict on your side of court.
yes, you're talking about libel and defamation.
Yeah.
Those are, again, those are, we have current laws that allows for people to go and if somebody if Trump, for example, Trump, by the way, Bill Maher made fun of Trump for his parents being a monkey or something, and then Trump sued him for libel, or I forget which one. Libel, one of them is the written form, one of them is a spoken form of, but that's different. That's yeah, you can take to the court. And by the way, in the US, if you do take that to the court, you usually lose because freedom of speech usually trumps that. In UK, it's different. In UK, they have some hate speech laws and stuff. So if, I mean, put the laws aside, I don't really care about the laws that much. If we believe in freedom of speech, and who decides by what is a falsehood? And when I'm not talking about libel and defamation of, for example, me saying Einstein was a idiot, he wasn't a genius. That, I'm not talking about that, but talking about talking about, oh, Trump is planning a day, that a day of reckoning, right? Who, I mean, who decides that's a falsehood
No,
or that
that's fine. Yeah, that part is fine. But all the things associated with Pizzagate, for instance.
what? Yeah, exactly. So, by the way, I mean, these conspiracy theories, they don't come out of nowhere. When Hillary's emails were leaked, his campaign manager, I forget his name, he they I mean, I don't think, by the way, they are, this is a, they control the world or anything, but they have ceremonies that these weird people usually have, with, they are actually, they do ceremonies about Satan. And there was this famous artist that asked for his sperm to use in a performance art. I think it's more hippie bullshit, to be honest. I don't think it's a conspiracy, but these conspiracies are rooted in some, real, tangible shit. So again,
But what about the
who?
violence? Do you think based on the violence? Because
No, of
this group
course,
incites a lot of violence. And you compared it to bigger religions, to religions and bigger groups. But those groups, they can maybe say, like, they're not purely associated with X or Y. But this one seems to be quite clear cut to me.
I, I, I don't know if they do incite violence. I think there should be criminal charges. They should be, whoever does that. But I don't think you should put a blanket like ban on QAnon groups. If I, and what's the point anyway? It just pushes it underground, and then it gets worse. It gets, oh, now they are
That,
victimized.
that's
Now they
interesting
are
with
marked.
the efficiency, but of how effective such a thing would be.
Oh, it won't be at all. It just gives them another excuse to call themselves victims and martyrs. To
But at
be
the same time, if they are, encouraging violence and all this,
no,
Facebook
again,
also
but
can.
that's a different thing, though. That's again incitement of violence, libel, and defamation. You can take legal actions. I'm not. This is an extra step. This is like saying climate change. People who talk about climate change because there is a group. There are green terrorists. There are that type of people who go and destroy factories. So because of that, we should ban all climate change. People who talk about climate change.
No, I mean groups. I mean, and here we're not talking about, for instance, banning all far right groups, but those specific groups could be targeted and banned. But I mean,
No, no, no.
I know this goes against
These are
what I've
racist.
argued for before. But just because this group seems to be so associated with things that can potentially turn easily into very dangerous and have really harmful impact on the ground, that's why I think that in people's lives, and I mean some of these, with some of their conspiracy theories.
I think individuals should be held responsible for the actions they do. But when you start doing like banning ideologies or what, I think, to be honest, it's better if everything is out in the open. Even racists who I abhor more than other groups personally, I think they should be allowed to have Facebook groups or whatever. At least, we can see them that way. You know, we can see them coming. So, whatever. But yeah, again though, I this is I just don't like to be a straw man here. Incitement of violence, libel, and defamation, they are all already illegal, and I agree with the illegality of those, right? But not
Yeah.
with
So that's kind of my argument, is that most of the groups and most of the things associated, it seems like, with QAnon fall easily within those. Now, if somebody's going to pursue them legally or not, that's not really Facebook's
Facebook's
place.
problem.
Yeah, but
Yeah, exactly.
that's why with this one,
It's kind
this
of
one I kind of side with them. I mean, I'm also still, I'm not 100% sure, and I really wanted to hear what you're saying, and I take your what you're saying. But out of all the previous quote unquote high profile cases, this is the one where I see the most legitimate reason for taking such actions.
to be honest, I think it's part of a trend that is not helpful. That, oh, let's make corporations socially responsible,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean,
or
don't get me started
or
on that.
or Facebook is responsible for hate. No, corporation is there, and I'm actually on the side of corporations here. They are there to make money. Government is the one who should be regulating, and so go
100%.
to police and say, why don't you take actions? Don't go to Facebook and ban people from,
No,
because
I 100% couldn't agree more. And that's why, once again, we shouldn't like blame the existence of this group and all of that on social media and Facebook, which is it's clearly not true, and not take part in such reduction arguments.
reductionist arguments.
Yeah.
All right, so what's the next topic that you had for us?
So do you want? So we have the vice presidential debates that we wanted to get into. I think we should do vice president, and then we'll do a small media watch segment, and then wrap up with just maybe making fun of Trump a bit and the audacity of this guy. This is just, I mean, this is one part where I was like, just blown away. But we'll get to that. What I mean, what I'm talking about by the audacity. You probably know what I'm referring to. But okay, so the vice presidential debates just happened. Any interesting takes you have on that? I have
Uh,
two things that, 2 points I have.
I only have one take, and I watched the live watch with Katie Halper and Matt Taibbi, and at one point, Matt Taibbi described when when Pence was talking, he said this is like watching a moth die from natural causes, and I must agree it was that boring, except the part where the fly came and some of the Pence's just matter of fact claims, just with his very calm and very whispery voice. But it was boring. It was irrelevant. I don't think it matters, and they just repeated the lines given to them. So, and it didn't even have the fun Trump effect. So you know
You know the fly thing? Just a
that was
while ago, I was doing a video interview, but it was recorded. And there was a fly all over me on my face, and I didn't know what to do half the time. And then I was like, I was trying to get it to go away. It
why.
was so funny, just like Pence. He did a better job though. He was like, he was like,
I don't think he noticed. I don't think because he was here, right?
yeah, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I think I don't know. Okay, so two things came to me. One is that after I was listening to the Young Turks and their breakdown of it today, and Cenk was like just saying all the other way. Cenk Uygur, the man behind TYT, really, he was saying that Kemal should have been like more aggressive, and he was showing what he would have done, and like, yeah, sure, that sounded much better because I watched the highlights of it, which was about 17 minutes, And she did seem like, she kept on doing like this smirky thing. Like he would say something ridiculous, and she'd be like, "Are you guys hearing the stuff that he says?" And I don't know how that's taken too much. But if I hadn't heard the stuff that they said about Michelle Obama about a month ago, when she just she did a talk during the Democratic convention, they were like, she was aggressive. And man, I saw like a clip of it. I mean, I've never seen someone being like, more soft spoken and just gentle. I was like, these people are crazy. Like, what are they talking about? I mean, why would Michelle Obama get mad anyway? And so I kind of understand in a way that, Kamala Harris kind of taking her side here. I mean, she hasn't come out and saying this, but if she was just a bit more forceful, there would have been a big narrative around, her being too aggressive, or I don't know, all these kind of things that they say about Michelle Obama, which is furthest from the truth. But then I think, like, maybe you should do it, because sometimes Biden is not even a socialist and they accuse him of being a socialist. So even if you're not, if you're not a bit more imposing, they're still going to come out and say these things on her. But I think that's really something that, that works against them, is that if she actually is, strong and, impose herself more, they would have been like, oh, look at this angry, black woman and blah, 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 shouting. So that's just one thing that I think really held her back. And unfortunately, even though I don't agree with most of their policies, and I don't think they even have anything to say, but that's just something that should not be, brushed aside. It is a very important dynamic that she has to work with.
Sure. No, to be honest, I think she could have maybe gone more aggressive, but it would have risked, a backlash perhaps, because Pence is such a,
And yeah,
goody two shoe as well. But to be honest, again, this is so insignificant in the whole thing. I mean, I would have played it safe too.
yeah.
Well, yeah, I would. Yeah, I to be honest, I do that too, like the smirk thingy. But yeah, I would have just. It doesn't. It's not a good look in debate when you're trying
And
to
she did
kind
it
of.
a lot, it seemed like.
Yeah, she's famous for it, really. But
Which, in
uh,
a way, it's a human reaction, I mean, when
yeah,
he comes up with the hypothetical of, if the swine flu was
nice.
as deadly as deadly as the
90
coronavirus,
million.
then what the hell are you supposed to say to that? Or, I mean, one other thing I wonder was fact check. He kept on talking about Biden wanting to ban fracking. And he said there are hundreds of thousands of jobs associated with the fracking industry. I mean, I don't know
Yeah,
how much you have to, like, how far you have to go, being like, this job depends on this, on that, on this. But I mean, it was a bit ridiculous. I mean, it sounded like quite a
I don't
high
know,
made
maybe
up,
on.
but because these industries, natural resource industries, are sometimes not that, labor intensive. They're not like manufacturing.
No, but I do think fracking is a big industry now in the US. It's not a small,
Yeah.
it's pretty big right now. So no, I do think that was actually important, but I don't think Biden is not gonna ban fracking. It's, that's no, yeah. So yeah, I mean, he might not give them as much subsidy.
Yeah.
That's about it. I don't think that, but yeah, I mean, in
Yeah.
terms of, it was very pretty much the first half, which I watched in with more focus, was pretty much, you killed this many people, and then the other guy saying, if it were you, you would have killed this many people. So
Yeah.
like, not much substance really.
Exactly. And then people are like, and you hear like, oh, it was like civil, but we didn't get much substance, and we didn't learn about their policies. I mean, listen, if there were policies to learn about, you would have heard about them over the course of past 2 years. It's not like these people were, kept away, and this is the first time that they got to talk. If there was a policy that they could, proudly mention without
Yeah,
people
they
like
would have.
being, what the hell, they would have. But I mean, what are they gonna say?
No, completely agree with you there. Completely agree with you.
But yeah, okay. So let's keep on moving. All right, the media representation. Did you see the little article that I sent you?
Yeah, yeah, but go ahead, tell us what.
So pretty
I
much
mean,
it's just
I don't know your take actually on
okay.
it.
So it's an article from an Iranian news outlet called Fars News, and they pretty much show that when we're going to put a photo of this, but early on during the pandemic, the Iranian Ministry of Environment, anyway, the head of the Ministry of Environment,
Health, I
Health,
think health.
I thought it was Environment.
I believe deputy health minister. Anyway, maybe
Yeah.
environment.
So he was infected by coronavirus, but he was actually, it was during a live recording of some kind of speech, and you could clearly see him. He was wiping sweat off his face, and he
Oh,
didn't.
he went to a state television interview and he was like, the
So
best.
yeah, we could see what shape he was in. And then they pretty much point out that the article points out that anytime they talked about, him having the virus, they would show a picture of him, and not a good image of him, kind of pointing out to, what are these guys kind of doing, and maybe their incompetence, or why is he in front of camera. And then they juxtapose that
Yeah,
with,
you didn't. The Fars News was talking about BBC Persia.
okay, so BBC Persia, but I think this could apply to any other Western media, I think, because they do this all the time. Whereas when BBC Persia showed pictures of Western politicians, Trump, Boris, having the virus, there weren't pictures of that time at all. There were just other pictures that make him, make it look good and give like a presentable picture of him. So the article was kind of pointing out at this double standard. And I think this this is at the root of, we talk about all this fake news and stuff. And just like I mentioned earlier on, I don't think mainstream media does a lot of fake news in terms of saying something that is outright false. What they do is put out a lot of purposely misinformed, incomplete information that leads people to, to the wrong conclusions, and their misrepresentation all the time. And this was a clear other example of, showing your enemies and the people that you don't like or whatever always in one way, and on the same exact issue showing people on your side totally differently. And it reminded me of this hilarious Maz Jobrani joke. He's an Iranian American comedian. He goes on the Young Turks sometimes, and he's like, they always show, this joke is from like 15 years ago, so it's super relevant back then with terrorism and all this. And he's like, they never show like an Arab doing something good, so they're never like, it never shows like clip like, hi, I'm an Arab and I'm just baking a cookie, like something like that. It's always represented in such a negative and terrifying way. But whereas the same issues are often discussed in different ways. Or you can look at terrorist attacks. When it happens in Western countries, they do such a good job of really capturing the fear of the people. But then where it happens somewhere else, it's kind of, it's very like this kind of news thing. You don't feel the emotions and what, some of the victims and people who were there, what they were going through.
I think two completely different things. First, with terrorist acts, I definitely agree that it's people are like, yeah, the focus in the West is much more. If there is a smaller attack in the West, it gets far more coverage, blah, blah, blah. But that's, I suppose, in a way natural because that's their home country. And I'm sure if Somalia develops a strong international broadcasting company, then they would cover themselves more.
Home country, but it can happen in France, and then the way the U.S. media will cover that, or other Western media outlets.
France is closer to BBC than, let's say, Nepal, right? So, yeah, to me, that's not that surprising there. But, I hope it will become a more and more international place, but that makes sense. About the leaders and the Iranian thing, if they argued that, to be honest, during Obama years, when David Cameron, or more so Tony Blair, when these people were in power, I would have agreed. But in case of, for example, Boris Johnson or Trump, I think they get as shit, they're as much shat on as Iranian officials, including on BBC Persia, So I think they have this, love for decorum and people speaking very nicely and calmly and saying nothing while actually saying a lot of words doesn't mean anything, just like Obama saying beautiful words that don't mean shit, right? So they love that. And they attack everybody, including the Iranian government. Right now, I don't think Trump or Boris Johnson, for example, or for example, that guy, the idiot. He was an idiot. The idiot Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott, for example. I think they get as much shit as I don't think there's difference. I don't think it's about racism or Arabs or Iran. It's more about decorum for them, and it's more of a class thing basically. They like that professional managerial class that is highly educated and stuff. And for example, that's why they love Zarif, Iranian foreign minister. He always gets a good he pretty much always gets a good coverage, except when they have this opinion piece that, we know that he looks very clean and he's very nice and stuff, but behind him there are evil forces, you know. So it's more about because why? Because he's educated in San Francisco and he international law, blah blah blah. So I think it's more about that than racism or that type of thing.
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
my
I do agree that but I mean, they hate Trump as much as, they've ever
and
hated
Boris Johnson.
anyone, and Boris Johnson. But in the article, they did show that even though they hate them so much, the pictures and the representation that they put out, even for those two, weren't, like, they weren't like horrific ones, or like, yeah,
Well,
point.
to be fair, Iranian politicians don't help themselves with their posing and dress code and everything. You can't blame everything on, you should take control of the narrative yourself to an extent. He, you saw the videos of that guy.
Yeah,
Wow, he
that's
was
true. No, that's
like
true.
with a fucking napkin and yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So and oh my god, there was an interviewer. Just I don't know. I don't know.
yeah.
I'll,
But
I'll- yeah.
in general, my bigger point was that fake news we hear about all the time, but I feel like it's taken away some of the genuine media criticism that's always existed, and it's been replaced with fake news criticism.
Oh, sure, sure, that's true. And to be honest, I just don't think there is ever everybody who gives any news has an agenda, has a bias. Like there is no neutral
Except
news.
I mean, the big ones like CNN and all these, they kind of position themselves as international, especially CNN International, and they keep on saying, how X is objective and we're being objective and we're being objective, whereas you and I and many other people don't say this. So that's why it's much more fair to criticize them that way.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, exactly.
I
I
mean, there's
mean,
this
whoever
one guy on CNN, he's ridiculous. He's like the person who criticizes media.
the bald guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I know. I hate him.
He,
And he looks like he looks like a highly educated egg, basically. And
But sorry, the worst on CNN is this guy. I don't know why they got like a 50-year-old man to do videos that are meant to be for younger people on
oh
YouTube.
yeah,
I
the
mean,
guy.
I'm like, why did you guys pick this? Why?
Yeah, I know the guy who does analysis on
Yeah.
YouTube. Oh
Yes.
fuck hell! I want to murder. Yeah, no, no. I'm this. By the way, this was inciting violence, but that was a joke. But yeah, I loathe him. I loathe. He thinks he's talking to 5-year-olds. My nephew finds him condescending.
I
Like,
know.
and my nephew is fine.
And if you want to do that, I mean, at least put a. I don't understand why this guy. Why did they give this guy the job?
This guy's in.
Man, I feel so bad. I mean, like, if I ever see him for a second, I will be like, why has your life come to this? I mean, I'm sure you can get a
To be fair,
slightly.
if they offer me $1 million a year to do that, I'll do it.
But I feel
And
like he can
I
get
was
eight
thinking,
hundred thousand to do something, a bit less embarrassing. Just do normal CNN stuff.
just the no usual approach.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean these people they look so fake as especially the guy we were talking about at first. Just the way he talks, everything, it
Yeah.
just seems so fake, so rehearsed, and kind of like early Tucker Carlson with his bow tie and like you could tell he's just trying to create a. I mean, we all try to create characters, blah blah blah, but just too much effort and
Yeah.
too rehearsed, perhaps. I don't know. That's the feeling I get. But to be honest, I don't think they're the worst people out there. Obviously, Rush Limbaugh or these people are far more awful. But
Yeah.
this self-righteousness and
These guys are more pathetic.
the claims to objectivity and it's like a goose mother.
Mhm.
Oh, fuck off! Like you really wanna, yeah. Anyway, if I continue, I might incite violence again.
Listen, I'll talk to Facebook about banning you or not.
Yeah.
According to my criteria. No, I don't think according to my criteria you'd be okay. I think you'd be okay.
Yeah. All right. Oh, thank you. All right.
I think you'd be okay.
Hopefully. Yeah.
But all right, so this week we have kind of quick and fast one, and we don't really have a real feel good or funny story. I mean, just before we wrap up on coronavirus, we did a hilarious story a few weeks ago. I'll link it in the description box about Bibi Netanyahu and his taking suitcases full of dirty laundry for the US government to wash. That's just hilarious. And then we did a kind of similar story to this, Sambar, about Nancy Pelosi. She got some backlash for getting a haircut during the lockdown. And now the Israeli prime minister wife, so Sara Netanyahu, she got similar backlash. They showed her getting a haircut. It's unclear if and you're not supposed to, apparently right now in Israel, you're not allowed to leave your house more than a kilometer radius. So it definitely, if she went somewhere and actually got it, it seemed like it clearly broke the law, but whatever, who cares? But I didn't get from the story anyway if the person came to her house or wherever they're staying for the hair, to style her hair. And if this is true, she had a she's like, apparently she was doing a recording on TV. She was supposed to do some kind of recording. So I mean, I kind of get her. Someone in her position, there has to be something in place. She's not gonna just go on TV like that. But I'll finish this up and then I'll pass it to you. But the funniest thing that I heard though was her defense of it. So they said that in the article that they wrote that they both wore masks and gloves during the appointment. But she also asked the stylist to refrain from making conversation. The nicest thing you can say to someone. Please don't talk to me.
Yeah. Just please. I have medical reasons for you to shut up.
Yeah. But yeah.
I've had haircuts since Corona started, and I guess it depends on your living situation and how you're gonna come into contact with which people and stuff.
I mean, I'm getting them here too, but legally. I mean, I'm getting haircuts too, but right now, like where I'm in Switzerland, it's legal to get.
Yeah, same haircut. With me. It's been done legally, but.
No, I was gonna ask. I don't know what's illegal.
Is heroin legal or not now? Can I drink coffee? Is it legal?
I found my own framing of it kind of funny.
Yeah, I legally walk today.
But hey, you're not. Whoa! It can be illegal. So
yeah, these days it can be. But so it's not something. But I mean, she's famous for her temper and the way she treats people who work for her. I'm not super. And to be honest, this type of corruption is not the type of corruption I care to. 100%, it is funny.
100%. I mean, actually, the part I found, I wouldn't have found it funny, but for that line about them asking not to make conversation.
I might use that, to be honest, next time we get a Uber or something. I might use that. I think you're going to use that too. Because of Corona, don't talk to me.
Okay, and then, Trump had COVID. I think he still has COVID. They haven't yet to say that a negative test, so he still has COVID. But what I found funniest, and I was still surprised, and I don't know why, but it's like the audacity. And in Farsi, they say something even funnier. They say like "Khejalat ham khub chiziye," which I guess in English kind of means like being shy and embarrassed is a good thing. Yeah. Is that how you translate it?
I would say shame can be a good thing.
Shame can be a good thing. Okay.
Shame can be a good thing.
So this,
you can say, I think bellicose is closest to Poru.
Okay.
But he's really Poru, or he's very bellicose.
Yeah. I think. So in English, I think you could also say like look at the audacity of this guy. Because
Yeah.
this guy comes comes back from the hospital, drugged up with God knows what. You know, he got like steroids and everything. He just came back. He got flown to hospital, comes back, and he's like, coronavirus is nothing. You know, it's not dangerous at all. You look at me, I'm all completely okay. While he's like drugged up to the max. I mean, I don't know what he expected, but I'm like, come on, like, is that something you really need to say? I guess in his mind, yes, to go with his narrative, but I mean, come on, you just
I mean,
a
he's
bit of
trying.
self-awareness, you know?
I guess he's trying to shore up his base. This is something Bolsara. No,
Bolsonaro.
yeah, sorry about that. But he did as well after he got corona. He took off his mask and stuff. So I think it's more for internal political use, and he obviously doesn't care at all about his bodyguards or people surrounding him. So all I can say, yeah, kind of with Trump, it's not surprising, but yeah, truly shame can be a good thing sometimes.
Yeah, and speaking of his
Yeah.
bodyguards, I just heard Cenk Uygur talking about this from the Young Turks. Apparently, the head of security is severely sick with COVID. Apparently, I haven't read any other articles. And you
Well,
know,
to be
isn't
fair,
it funny that
you know the job you sign up for. So.
yeah, and this guy, and you know, it's funny. I feel like Pence. It shows that he's kind of smart guy, and he's not the one who's sick. Because I feel like he doesn't suck up as much to Trump, and the other ones who are sick, I feel like they're like they get maybe closer than you would even like get in a normal situation
Well,
just to this guy, just to show we're like you or whatnot. I mean, I don't know.
I think I think Penn sucks up enough, which just does it for over the phone or from distance or
Yeah,
something. No, I do think Biden got fucking lucky because if Biden got this, that for him that was that was pretty much a
yeah.
death death sentence.
But they were a few meters apart, no, during the debate.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
were. He got lucky. He
yeah,
got lucky. Yeah.
yeah. Okay. All
Anyways,
right, so that's for today, and I keep on forgetting to do a major housekeeping rule in the beginning, which is that we timestamp all the different stories that we have, so you can just jump to the story that you want to listen to. All the links and everything are also in the description box below. And
please like and subscribe.
yep, definitely, and thank you for anyone who has commented, and we're actually going to go back to the comment from the last video and let the person know that we actually picked up on his criticism and his comment in our video for today, and we'll leave a link to there. And yeah, okay, so that's it, Hassan.
Yeah, exactly. Have a good week and next week. See you all then.
Yep, thank you, and see you all next week.